Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Everyday Defender podcast. We're super excited today. As you can see, we are recording from New York City. Koos and I are both here for the Experts Live US conference, first edition of Experts Live in the United States. I think we're very excited and both quite proud and happy to have been here today and mingling with everyone, doing sessions and all the rest of it. So it's been a lot of fun. We've even coordinated outfits today.
Even our pants are the same. We didn't spoke about it before, but
yes, we've coordinated our outfits. I guess really today's episode really is very much about Experts Live and the sessions that we have brought to Experts Live. Right. It's been a fun couple of days. A long trip to get here for me. I think it was about 26 hours door to door. So it was a little bit of a long travel, but.
And remind me again, what's your time zone difference? You're feeling it is now, for example, 1:30 in the afternoon, so 1:30 p.m.
Yeah, I think it's about 16 hours to Sydney. Sydney's about 16 hours ahead of us, so it's been a little bit.
It's already a new day in your head.
It is what it is. Yeah. Okay. It's already Saturday.
Well, great to see you, man, in person again. Second time for this year.
That's awesome, and
it's always much more fun than doing it from home with StreamYard and streaming setup.
That's right, and. Well, I guess what's also nice about it is kind of special occasion to wrap up, I guess, the first year of the podcast, right? So, episode 12, end of the season 1 for us. It's been fun, and we've got some ideas for season 2. So we won't spill the beans or spoil it too much, but some ideas for next things coming. But So in today's episode, I guess for those of you wanting to know what we're going to talk about today. I've been thinking a lot about security baselines and default security configurations within M365 specifically. And so the session that I sort of brought to Experts Live is all about that, talking about how we secure the defaults within M365, how do we build a baseline for that security, and then how do we actually monitor and track it, right? So how do we make sure we're not deviating from our baseline? And how do we continuously improve that? Because, we talk all the time about security not being set and forget, right? You can't just implement something and then walk away from it. So very much that was my session, and that's kind of what I was talking about. I had a little bit of a demo as well, and we'll dig into that today. And then, Koos, as always, we're talking about logs, right?
Yes. Well, my session is about Sentinel. I know I've spoken about it last episode, and I promised everybody that we're not going to only talk about Sentinel, but obviously this session, and maybe also fun for people to know how that works. When a session like this comes up, they have a call for speakers, and they ask everybody to bring in some topics. And well, since this is the topic I'm most passionate about and work with every day, I submitted a session. I tried to come up with a little catchy title, getting the most bang out of your logs, because with Sentinel, the cost aspect is always a big discussion point. So I cobbled up a lot of different notes from the field, so to speak, best practices, things we saw at customers and in the environments we manage at Wortel, and share my experience and some solutions to everything that. So it is the Sentinel show once again in sort of respect, but this was again was a lot of best practices, and I submitted this months ago, and I was really glad that I got accepted and can talk about it.
And it's I guess a little bit goes into that, right? Because ultimately you submit an abstract to a session like this many months before the conference. And we all know that we live in this world now where stuff changes all the time, right? So, you really are fine-tuning that session and fine-tuning things, as you progress closer to the day of presenting. I know there's stuff in your session that, was only released a couple of weeks ago, right?
Yes.
So there's always new material and new content that kind of makes it in. But I also think it's really important to, and I was talking to Brenda about this last night, one of the organizers, it's important to have folks talk about stuff that they're passionate about.
Yeah, totally.
When you're in a room listening to someone present content and material, it's always going to be better when that person is passionate about the subject, right? Passionate about the subject matter.
We don't have any sales talks here.
That's right.
That's really great.
Yeah. So I think nothing wrong with Sentinel and having logs.
No. And I think I have a couple of things to share, and I hope there will always be people in the room knowing certain bits.
Of course.
But I've cobbled together so many different topics. I'm sure there's something new for at least anyone in the room. So I'm looking forward to that one.
Yeah, and I think so. I guess to dive in a little bit and talk about security baselines, right? I think for me, one of the things that is very evident with when I talk to customers about how do we properly secure their environment is obviously there are many dimensions to a security program, right? Keeping your environment secure is not just about having an endpoint security or having anti-spam message hygiene. There's a lot of layers. There's a lot of dimensions to it, and we really need to make this distinction between what we call baseline security, which is the stuff. The inherent risk of just configuration and operating in complex environments, right? Versus threat actor defense, which is really where we talk about that active risk of defending against malicious external parties. Those are different things, but they have to come together to form this security posture and a program of securing our environment. And so that's really what I'm talking about here is like, how do we understand the difference of these things? And then be able to separate them out into what are we talking about when we say baseline security, right? And one of the things that sort of little sayings I came up with, I think, when I was building this talk was there are a lot of M365 configurations and settings that are super convenient by default, but they're really, really risky as well, right? And if you think about it, Microsoft's whole goal with M365 is to make folks productive, and so very often those default configurations in M365, they're there to make you productive. Well, being productive and being secure sometimes are not, they're competing objectives. They don't always align. And so it's about finding that balance of how do we keep our folks being productive, but also be as secure as possible and plug the holes, right?
What kind of examples would you be thinking of?
Well, some of the examples I think that are very easy to talk about are things like SharePoint and OneDrive sharing, right? Yeah. Anonymous sharing links, open sharing to anyone. Teams external collaboration is another one where, by default, anyone can just communicate to any Teams.
It is handy.
It's very convenient, isn't it? But if you're thinking about, how do you protect your data and your IP within your business, well, maybe you don't want to just allow, you want to at least control who you allowing sharing with and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, because those business emails are, a lot of are out in the open. So attackers are actually using them to reach out via Teams and sending out phishing links, for example.
And that's exactly right, because they know email hygiene is a lot more mature, right? And that most organizations have some level of email hygiene. Yeah. But Teams might be a little bit more open, so why not try and attack that? Yeah. Other examples are things like application consent, application registration, right? Those little consent pop-ups that happen when you click on the latest note-taking app and you just give it access to all of your stuff. Yeah. Being able to lock those things down is really, really important. And so the way I sort of recommend to customers and to folks to approach this is by, I guess, what I've called the security baseline lifecycle, right? Which is really just this process or this flow, workflow of firstly assessing your environment, making sure you understand exactly where you are from a security perspective, warts and all, right? It's very important to be honest about where you are exactly with the security of your environment. Then defining what that baseline looks like. And defining that baseline looks at things like CIS controls or the NIST framework or some sort of regulatory framework or compliance framework that defines what secure is for your industry or for your business type. And once you've defined that, you obviously have to implement that, right? So actually ticking the boxes and implementing those controls, building the processes that support these controls is also very, very, very important. And usually that's where folks stop. Like they run through the checklist, they check the boxes, and then they're like, yep, now we're secure. The thing is, threats are constantly evolving, and so we need to continuously monitor our environments as well to make sure that if there are new threats coming, if things are updated or guidance is updated, that we keep following that, right? Yeah. But we also want to monitor for configuration drift and deviation. Yeah. Just because you've made a policy that says, we only have 3 global administrators in our organization, or we don't allow any permanent global admins in our organization, doesn't mean it's always going to stay that way, right? So you need to be able to monitor that to see that, if all of a sudden now you have 6 global admins today and yesterday you only had 3, well, why is that? You want to know about it and you want to be able to look into that. So continuous monitoring, really, really important. And then once you've kind of gone through this loop of monitoring your environment and looking at things, being able to feed back into the process, because you're going to see that things are either too locked down for certain circumstances, in which case you're going to have all these exceptions. Well, that's not good either, right? If you're finding that your processes are impeding the business, you want to be able to feed back in and maybe come up with a different process or a different security control or something like that. Yeah. So that constant feedback loop is really important.
Yeah, because we all have been there, that when we had to troubleshoot something and we granted some people just global admin so that they could resolve their issue.
Right.
And that will be probably never taken down automatically as well.
Exactly right. Yeah. So being able to identify that stuff is really important. And so as part of my my session, one of the things that I demoed was using the Meister toolset. And I think everyone in the Microsoft community, I think at this point is probably familiar with Merrill Fernando and Meister, and there's a lot of those, Fabian Bardo, there's a lot of those guys that are working on that project, using this and actually iterating through a sort of a good, better, best scenario, right? So if you think about a good is running Meister on your local machine every month and looking at the report, and then that will help you possibly identify issues. A better scenario is maybe running that in Azure Automation on a weekly schedule, so you can kind of get these reports emailed to you every week or sent to your Teams channel every week, and actually then being able to look at them. And then best scenario maybe is running it and then actually doing a diff or looking at what changed between the last run and trying to alert and flag up on that, right?
Yeah, that was really cool.
Yeah, and you can, there's so much cool stuff out there that you can kind of put together in an automated fashion to help identify issues and drift and things like that. And then the sky's the limit, right? If you want to, from there, we just came out of a session looking at model context protocol, MCPs, and how that stuff can tie into Defender and how you can tie that in. Imagine being able to, once you've identified an issue, potentially automate or tie in some sort of MCP agent or automate an alert into ServiceNow or something like that, right?
Or log analytics. And then you have a Sentinel detection for it.
Exactly, Sentinel detections. There's this constant evolution, and I think ultimately what I want folks to go away from the session and walk away from this is one, understanding the sky is the limit as far as what you can do here, but don't do nothing.
No.
You've got to start somewhere. Even if you start very small with one very small thing where you're just tackling identity and you just look at your identity, look at where you are today. How can you improve that? How can you monitor for improvements? Next month, next quarter, next year, tackle another piece, right?
Yeah.
You're going to be better off for starting. Yeah. I think a lot of organizations look at frameworks, especially things like NIST and ISO, and get overwhelmed by the complexity.
Yeah.
And you don't have to, right? Start somewhere, build out a baseline, and then start to implement that, and just continually improve it all the time as you move along. You'll be significantly better off.
Yeah.
So we'll put together the show notes, obviously, as we normally do, and there's obviously a lot of information and links to stuff that we will include in the show notes.
You had a lot of links in your slide deck as well, so I think it would be great to attach the
and I think we could even attach the slide deck to the notes. I think that would be a good idea.
Yeah.
That can make up a lot of the show notes. Lots of links to frameworks and tool sets. Meister is just one of the tools that are available to you. There's a lot of other tools available in the market.
And Meister diff you used for the difference.
Meister diff, which is a really cool script for the difference. I have some code for the Azure Automation runbooks on how that all works and hangs together. So, even though maybe you weren't here to watch the session live, we'll post the slides and all of the bits and pieces so you can kind of come up to speed with it.
Unfortunately, the sessions itself were not recorded, but we also try with this podcast, of course, to add a little bit of context to the slides, and then the code we'll be sharing, so it will be helpful for others to use as well.
Yeah, and that was me really talking about baselines and security baselines, and Koos, you mentioned Sentinel and more bang for your logs.
Yeah, I couldn't help myself. I'm always, same as with the podcast titles. We have to think of a funny one for this one,
right?
But I'll probably be able to come up with something.
I'm sure you will.
That's something I like to do.
Yeah.
So getting the most bang out of your logs. This is again a wink to the cost aspect of Sentinel. So I start off with a short history about Sentinel, how it all started as a log analytics solution and how it became notorious for being quite expensive, according to a lot of customers. And I think Microsoft did a couple of things throughout the year to help people with different table tiers. We talked about them on an earlier episode as well. And recently, of course, Data Lake. This is something I touched on the last episode. And this is really a game changer in my opinion. So I'm taking everybody in the room across that history and why I think Data Lake is so huge, especially from the setup perspective. Before you had to mess up with data collection rules and data collection endpoints and managing schemas, and with Data Lake is just a one click and then all the data is mirrored into the lake and then you can just keep it there for longer. I think that's pretty powerful stuff. And again, on the cost-wise, I have a lot of tips and a few things I wanted to point out here. I actually was talking with a customer this morning from the hotel room. It was afternoon in the Netherlands. It was early morning for me, but I was awake anyway, so I agreed to set up a meeting. And this customer had a log analytics workspace they used for monitoring operational stuff. And they had some nice dashboards with some graphs on there. But somebody from the team decided a while back, would it be fun to experiment with Sentinel a bit? So he enabled Sentinel in that workspace, totally unaware of the impact of that. And they were actually not even using the Sentinel specific features. But I pointed out to them that by removing the solution, they already save more than 2,000 euros a month by just removing that solution. And we were having a discussion about some cost aspect on Sentinel, and I wanted to persuade him to onboard certain logs, and we having a discussion about the added cost. So I had a great card on in my sleeve, and I could pull out and say, okay, if you agree that we onboard those logs, please let me help you remove the Sentinel solution there, and then you even have money to spare at the end of the month. So that's something I wanted to point out. And obviously with Sentinel you have the commitment tiers. So you start with pay as you go, and this can be quite expensive quite quickly. And I actually wrote a PowerShell script, I think more than a year ago already, but it's still in effect with us and a few of our customers, where you could actually continuously look a little bit sort of what you were saying about the security baselines. We're looking at a usage baseline. So we know what to expect from some Sentinel usage by looking back at the last 90 days, for example. And we collect a thresholds, what would be the minimum and maximum amount. And then we compare that on a monthly basis to what we're actually using at that month. And this enables us to automatically scale the commitment tiers up and down. And this is great for migrations, for example, when people start migrating into Sentinel, or maybe migrating away again now to Data Lake. They might need a lower tier, for example. And automation like that can help, and you can run it in an automation account as well, or in your seamless code solution with DevOps or GitHub or whatever. So that's something I'm not demoing that particularly. I am demoing the Data Lake functionality, but something on CostMind I think is not spoken enough about. And this is the SCUs, and this is something that is really funny. You're already laughing because you know.
Yes, this is the trigger point for you, I know.
SCUs. It's like you'd think about security co-pilot units, but in this case, Microsoft thought it was a good idea to have Sentinel commitment units with the same acronym. So that's great. Thanks, Microsoft. Well, we are here a guest at Microsoft office at Times Square, so we will stay positive, of course, as always. But no, I think it's funny. So what most people don't know, and I haven't spoken about this on the podcast earlier, you can do an upfront payment with a pre-purchase plan, as they call it, or an SCU, where you say, I'm willing to spend, for example, $100,000 for prepaid, and you can spend the $100,000 for the rest of the year to cover your expenses for Sentinel. But you immediately, for $100,000 for that example, you immediately get over 20% discount. So you pay 78 something thousand, but you can pay your Sentinel bills from that. So for example, if you're ingesting, let me see if I get the example correct, 200 gigs a day, you're paying $2,000 a month. So if you pay upfront for the for $10,000, you can pay for 5 months of that bill. So you get the extra 20% discount from the pre-purchase plan on top of the discount you also already got from the commitment tier. So I think that's great stuff. It's not talked about enough, so I really wanted to point that out. And I have some, And I have also a demo about MCP server.
Okay, well there you go.
Yeah, so I was actually hearing in another session today that it's MCP server everywhere nowadays.
That's right.
To be honest, I wasn't aware of MCP server when I started looking into this because it was announced for Sentinel on October 1st, I believe.
Yep.
So only a little over a week ago.
Yep.
And I actually prepared a demo of showing everybody how you could very easily, with VS Code and GitHub Copilot, query the data in your data lake and in Sentinel without the need of security Copilot units, without any expensive AI. And I think this will be a game changer long term.
And of course now the MCP server supports data lake queries as part of the operations that it supports, right? So that's very cool.
Yeah, and obviously you are paying, if you're touching data lake, you are paying for the those queries, for retrieving the data. But now you can just ask GitHub Copilot, for example, I want in natural language, what do you want to find on the data lake? And it's really cool to see, and I have it in my demo, and I had to speed it up a little bit, but it's really cool to see how GitHub Copilot is actually figuring out, because I deliberately use a question like, give me these graph activities from this app registration, and I deliberately provide only the display name of the app registration,
so it has
while I know that the graph activity logs table only uses the app ID and not the display name. So you see GitHub Copilot doing some brute forcing, figuring out how to match the ID and the display name, and then figuring out a nice KQL query to give me the results I asked for. It's really cool stuff.
Yeah, no, it is really cool, but it's also really important to understand that it does that so that you also can put guardrails around how many times it will query for the same thing or whatever, because otherwise the bill might go a little bit out of control, right?
That is true. And I have to look into a little bit more of this because I was inspired by the previous session that you could do some predefined roles, so to speak. Rule sets. So you can say inside the MCP configuration, you can tell the MCP client, in this case, you are a tier 1 SOC analyst, and you only need to perform these and these tasks, and this will obviously limit the agent of reaching out to certain data.
And even being able to provide KQL templates and queries to it to use, right, and tell it to only execute those. Really cool stuff. So I think we're in a space that is developing and maturing quite quickly, isn't it?
Yeah. Another thing I didn't touch on our previous episode, which I think is also used, which comes with Data Lake, are the asset tables. So SOC analysts were always struggling finding data from Entra ID or maybe from Azure Resource Manager, Azure Resource Graph, I should say, to correlate with the incidents they are triaging at the moment. So for example, looking up users of a group or looking what kind of groups a user is a member of. They might not necessarily have access to pull any information. And now when you enable Data Lake, you get a set of tables for free. Microsoft just provides you that, exactly with that content. So the Entra users, the Entra groups, the memberships, and also a bunch of Azure Resource Graph groups. So now you can correlate, when you have a sign-in log from a user, you can correlate with KQL what groups the user is member of, or if you have a resource ID, you can find which Azure subscription is related, or what type of resource it is, etc., etc.
Wow, powerful stuff.
That's really powerful stuff, So I'm demoing that, I hope people like it. And I think this is only the beginning, because MCP server for Sentinel is now a public preview. There are still quite some limitations. You can only use GitHub Copilot with a VS Code if you want to do the querying. For example, Claude is not supported yet. And I also discovered that the GitHub Copilot isn't aware of those asset tables just yet. So the example I gave earlier about the app display name and the ID, it was doing all kinds of complex querying to figure it out, and it could have just asked the asset tables to figure out what the application is. But that will probably come eventually.
Yeah, look, everything is iterating so quickly at the moment, right? If things are coming out really quickly and probably not completely mature or fully baked just at the moment, but I mean, I guess that's part of the world we live in right now, right? So very cool. So I think that's it's been a lot of fun here. I think lots going on, but I'd also urge you folks, there's other Experts Live events as well, sort of all around the world, really. So keep an eye out for those events. I wish I could tell you all the ones that are coming up, but I know just for this year,
way too many.
There are way too many. I do think there's one in Denmark coming up this year still. There's one in Dubai coming up as well, and then
Sweden is coming up. I assume Switzerland.
So there's lots of things.
That's only Europe, but I'm also hearing stuff about
all over the place.
Yeah.
So watch the space, and obviously, we'll try and kind of keep everyone informed of new events and when they're happening and all that type of stuff, so you can check one out near you. But we do not have a community project for this episode, unfortunately. But we did not prepare one.
We came prepared, not. We just pulled out a couple of microphones and cameras from a bag and started recording. I hope people still enjoy it.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Look, we'll definitely we'll still keep the show notes, and obviously we'll publish slide decks and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then we'll make sure to catch up on the community projects on the next episode.
We'll make a good for it.
Yeah.
So Chris, thanks again for making this season with me.
Yes,
it was a blast.
It has been a lot of fun. So
I was forced sometimes to learn new stuff, which was also the reason why we started this, of course, coming up with topics, doing some research and investigation to share with the people, and I really enjoyed it. I think 12 episodes, they flew by.
They did fly by, yeah. So
it's weird to imagine that it's more than a year ago when we were discussing the idea of this.
Yes, absolutely. And it has been fun, folks. We appreciate you following along. I guess the next time we see each other in person will be March
MVP Summit
in Redmond. So that'll be another fun one for us to do a live recording.
Yeah.
But we'll keep pushing them out every month.
Yeah, we're not going to stop, right?
Of course.
No. So season 2 is coming next year. So we're already a couple of episodes in when we see each other again in March.
Yeah, very much. Very cool. We're going to wrap up from New York.
Have a safe trip, Chris.
I appreciate it. You
back
too.
down under.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you very much. We have some cold beverages to get to later this afternoon here in New York City. And again, folks, thank you for listening. Please reach out to us on the socials if there is anything that you would like us to cover, or if you have any questions or anything like that. Please feel free to grab us. And otherwise, we will catch you on the next episode. So thank you very much.
See you later. Bye-bye.